The Blind Tony Story, Book 7, Chapter 4. You know, and I haven't really mentioned my daughter in the last couple chapters at all. In fact, ever since I discovered her, I haven't mentioned her. I was very happy that God had gave me such a wonderful, beautiful daughter, but I was avoiding her, definitely. I think that any time we do something or are doing something wrong, we have a tendency to avoid those people that love us the most, the ones that really care about our welfare. We hide from. Even Adam in the garden, when he sinned, the first thing he did was try to hide from God. And I noticed that over the years, I tried to hide from my folks too. My family and closest friends, those who really cared about my welfare. I tried to hide from because I knew I was doing wrong. And I had been avoiding my daughter. Now here I am in a jam and I gotta leave town. And my one regret is that I didn't get to say goodbye to my daughter, Nisi. I did get to see Solara though, and I asked her to say goodbye for me. But that's still my regret that I didn't get to say goodbye myself. Now, Solara told me that Nisi would understand, and I can honestly say that Solara has never, ever, through all these years, said anything negative to Nisi about me, although I left plenty of room for her to do so. She has always spoken only good things about me. And I truly thank God for that too. Because there's so many women who are quick to poison the minds of the children against the fathers. Anytime those fathers are anything less than diligent in their responsibilities. I'm not saying that children shouldn't be told the truth. They should be told the truth. But if the truth be really told, Satan's been destroying families of all colors and all stations in life since the Garden of Eden. This is what he does, and he's very good at it. And in black families, the black man is usually the weakest link. He becomes the avenue through which Satan launches his attack on the family because he's already beat down and emasculated by society itself. Also, the spirit behind what is said is very important. Scripture says that it's not only what you say, it's how you say it, and also when you say it. In Proverbs it says it's apples of gold and an engraving of silver is a word spoken at the right time for it. When you say what you say and how you say what you say are very important. Many times the comments about the father are laced with so much venom from the mother that they only serve to increase the void and confusion that already exists in the mind of the child. It also serves to perpetuate the cycle of dysfunctionality from one generation to the next. I mean, there's no excuse for a man not taking care of his family now and for providing for his own. No excuse at all for that, except selfishness. And that's the same sin that Satan was guilty of in the beginning, selfishness. And we still perpetuate that same sin today. The Bible says that a man that doesn't provide for his own is worse than an unbeliever, an infidel. Anyway, that's what happened. It was what it was, and it is what it is. Like I said, my one regret was that I didn't get to say goodbye to Nisi. And my one area of thanksgiving and consolation is that Solara never said anything bad to Nisi about me, even though I left room for it. Anyway, I went to New York, and when I got there, I became part of a group of recyclers, or can people. Now, these are people who pick up bottles and cans and plastics and take them to recycling centers and redeem them for 5 cents a piece. Now, this is a huge business in New York, and I quickly teamed up with a group of recyclers from Florida. Now, they worked in the orange groves in the wintertime, and then they would come to New York and recycle during the summer months. It was hard, dirty work, but you can easily make a couple $100 a day. You know, in the New York Times magazine featured an article about a young man who made his first $1 million recycling. Unbelievable. He would buy bottles and cans all night long for half price on the streets, and then he would redeem them himself for full price in the morning when the recycling centers opened. Thus, he would double his money daily. It didn't take long for me to go from one big black trash bag to a shopping cart with bags attached to the side. And then eventually I went to two huge canvas mail carts that could each hold $300 worth of recyclables easily. Like I said, I hooked up with a group of recyclers from Florida, and we would camp out at 59th Street, and we would camp out like a caravan at 59th Street, and make a blockade that we would sleep behind. And then we would push all our recyclables to a place called Weekend, a recycling center at 9th Avenue and 49th Street. It was a huge park across the street from that recycling center, and eventually I moved into that park to get away from the rest of the group. Drugs were everywhere, high quality and low prices. And even though I made over $150 a day, I still mostly ate out of trash cans. All I did was get high. I can remember the first time I ate out of a trash can. You know, and that was one of the hardest things I had to do, was eating out of trash cans. You know, I used to eat out of Windows on the World or the World Trade Center, one of the finest restaurants in the world. Now here I am eating out of trash cans. But I was so hungry that even the smell of food would make me sick. Now this was before I started recycling now. I was walking down the street surrounded by all kinds of food vapors, hot dogs, pizzas, bakeries, restaurants. And then this lady came out of the donut shop with a bag of donuts in her hand. I was walking behind her, and she takes one out of the bag and takes a bite, and then tossed the donut in the trash can. I bent down like I was trying to tie my shoe, peeping around to see if anybody was watching me, and looked like nobody cared. So I stood up and I scooped up that donut at the same time, and I crossed the street. I bit into that donut. Oh man, it was soft, gooey, grape jelly oozed into my mouth. The outside of the donut was still warm. And nothing had ever tasted so good. I walked a little bit further and saw a half-empty bottle of beer. I scooped that up and turned it up to my lips and gagged. It was full of piss. And I quickly spit it out. I learned from that lesson to always sniff the bottles first. But from that day forth, I primarily ate out of trash cans. Trash cans offered me a smorgasbord of everything, from the 5-cent recyclables to all kinds of guns, jewelry, clothes, appliances, and dope. I worked alone, and I basically lived in the parks from the tip of Manhattan by the Staten Island Ferry all the way up through the Bronx. I mainly stayed by Columbia Presbyterian Hospital because that's where the best drugs were. I lived and slept in about every park in Manhattan, east side and west side. Life on the streets was treacherous, and there were always packs of rogue elements looking to take everything, whatever you had. And like everything else in my life, it only made me stronger. When it got real cold, I would stay in the subway station, filling up black bags with recyclables and stashing them in the subway tunnels, getting high all night long. And in the morning, I would always make sure I had at least $100 worth of recyclables to wake up to start my day. Lots of subway stations had steam heat venting through it, and even on the coldest of nights you could sleep there. You only had to be aware of certain police who were vicious and vindictive and sadistic. They would beat you down if they caught you sleeping on the subway platform. But I still slept on the subway platform, but I would make sure that I was up and gone before the morning rush hour started. Because because that's when the cops would make their rounds. There were elaborate mazes and tunnels underground, and I learned how to use them. And to be unafraid, the third rail was your biggest enemy. But after a while, you learn how to walk the tunnel, and you walk the third rail. As well, you learn how to avoid the oncoming traffic. There were storage rooms and closets, lots of rats, blackness. But there were people who lived down there. Mole people. Their skin was mottled with flecks of carbon, and they looked like coal miners. But I would never stay underground for more than a night or two. I loved the sunshine too much. Life on the streets was survival of the fittest, and I had many, many classes, one of which occurred when I refused to give up a cigarette. I was smoking a cigarette sitting on a bench on the park on Riverside Drive, 139th Street. Wow, I remember that clearly. Three men approached me. One of them asked me for a cigarette, and I said no. And then one of them said, why? And I said, because I don't want to. And then he said, well, save me some of that one you smoking. And I said, I'll think about it. Now, while I was talking to him, one of them had crept up behind me, and he grabbed me in a bear hug. I threw a kick at the one in front of me, the one I had been talking to, and the third one hit me across my face with a pipe. And the next thing I knew, I was crawling on the ground, asking people for help. And people were walking by, but nobody would stop. I kept smelling feces. I must have stepped in it or fell in it or something. But anyway, I checked my socks and my shoes, and the dope was still there. So was most of my money. I also had a backup crack pipe in my shoes. They had taken my cigarettes, a small amount of dope, several lighters, a crack pipe, my watch, and about $30 in cash. I had almost $100 worth of dope in my socks, plus another $50 in cash in my shoes. I partied, but I kept smelling the feces. I checked my shoes and my clothes and couldn't find nothing. But when I finally went to pee, I saw that I had moved my bowels all over myself. Wow, they beat me down good. Anyway, I always healed fast, and this was no exception. But I started to have a toothache that progressively got worse, and eventually I had to go to the emergency room. And I was told that there was nothing wrong with my teeth. I kept going back, and eventually they asked me if I had any facial trauma. And then I remembered that incident in the park. Now, this is about 6 or 7 months later. I was x-rayed, and it was determined that my jaw was broke. I was told that they would have to re-break my jaw and reset it in order for it to heal properly. Now, there's no way I could live on the streets of New York for months sipping out of a straw, a liquid diet, wearing a Frankenstein brace on my head. Plus the idea of me voluntarily letting somebody break my jaw, that's just unnatural and totally unacceptable. But still, I agreed to let them pull that tooth, and they inserted a bamboo shunt that allowed it to drain, and then they took the shunt out eventually. My jaw still aches when it gets cold, and I still ground my teeth at night in my sleep. And that's part of the long-lasting after effects from that beatdown. But life was still good, and I went back to picking up bottles and cans the very next day. Wow.